Um, Regarding the NCF, I think it is a wonderfully crafted document which has come now. It should have come a couple of years ago because it takes into account not only the purely academic subjects that we all associate schools with, but it also talks about co-curriculars and extracurriculars, but there are no more extracurriculars. We've embedded, it talks about embedding them into mainstream academics, along with, I think for the first time, the documents are also talking about social learning. They're talking about emotional well-being, empathy and compassion. All of that has been mentioned in the NCF, which is very wonderful. Of course, the implementation has its own challenges, but I think the education industry will deal with it by and by. Yes.
Mr. Mani.
As far as the new education policy is concerned, we know that so far the education system that is started from the Britishers' time. Britishers introduced the education system in order to train out some petty clerks. That time onwards, there was certain changes in the curriculum, but that curriculum was not up to the mark to meet the need of the present time. As a result, a lot of experiments, discussions, then policy making has taken place. In 2022, almost a draft was made, and upon that again there was a detailed study, discussion, panel discussions, and now a final draft is published. In this draft, actually along with the study, there are a lot of dimensions are included so that the students can, after going through it, they can meet the need of the present time. Simply bookish knowledge is not enough. Vocational education, for that purpose in the new curriculum, I think that more than 38 new vocation-oriented subjects are included. A lot of flexibility is given. Earlier it was not there. Rigidity was there. Now a lot of flexibility is given there. Large many subjects are added. In many ways, the children can learn for vocational education by getting trained from the classroom itself. They can prepare for, they can choose for a job, they can prepare for their job and see a good future vision is there in the new curriculum, I feel.
Professor Gupta, and I can tell you how good he is a teacher because I was asked to do a story on caste some years back. And coming from Assam, I didn't have much idea about the word Dalit. Means I knew about scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, but I didn't know what happens when you are tagged as Dalit. And he schooled me so well that after that, I did around 3-4 cover stories on India Today on Dalit and OBCs and all castes. And now I am seen as an expert on caste, though I am not. But I wanted to ask you, sir, that new education policy has a very specific focus on Indian languages, and this has become a kind of controversy. Some see it as a challenge against English, where there is a school of thought which says that because of English, we Indians have many advantages globally, and it has also been working as a binding force among Indians. How do you see this, sir? Have we gained from this English language, or do you see that the excessive focus on Indian languages at the cost of English could cost us? Because we have also 2 teachers who are predominantly teaching in English.
Well, I'm not very sure how to answer this question. All I can say is that there are many countries in the world where English is not the mother tongue, and yet they're very proficient in English because English is a good technical language. And therefore, if we want to support our mother tongue, which we should also remember that unless we're able to translate important works into our mother tongue, it'll be counterproductive. So it is very sentimental to say that we should be taught in our mother tongue, which is a very good idea. but we should be able to take it forward as well. Now listen, my father, I went to an English-speaking whatever school. By the way, the fundamental principle of British education is to be taught in your mother tongue. Okay? So I went to a school in India, which was English medium. My father, he went to a Bengali medium school in a village, and he spoke better English, Bengali, and Sanskrit than I would ever. So it is not about which school you go to, it's how well you're trained in the subject. So many of my teachers and colleagues in the JNU, where I come from, so many of them went to non-English speaking universities and colleges and schools, and they wrote beautifully. By the way, think of Mahatma Gandhi. Think of his English. Jawaharlal Nehru spoke Hindi at home. Think of his English. So it is not as if you're not taught in English in the school, at English medium schools, your English will not be good. What is most important is that you should know English as a technical language. Where we make the mistake is you make English into a cultural language. So do you know Shakespeare? Do you know Milton? You know, all of that stuff. That's not important. What's important is, do you know enough English to be able to take on the world on their terms? And you can be schooled in Hindi or Bengali or whatever, but you must have good books to accompany it. I went to some schools, and I won't tell you where. I went to some schools in India which are, you know, Hindi medium or vernacular. Some of them were Punjabi medium. And it was really quite tragic to see that they didn't have any books. You know, how you can't teach from one or two books. You must have a range of books. And what is more, if you're into higher education, you must have journals with these available. I'm in the trustee of the Economic and Political Weekly, and we made it our business to translate some important articles into different languages. But still, that is not enough. Much more needs to be done. I was looking at Raj Chengappa's letter to us. This was supposed to be a discussion on the future of education. And the future of education, I can tell you this much, that you cannot plan for the future of education because you don't know what the future is. You know, future of, you can know, tell us about, talk to each other about what's going to happen tomorrow. But the future is very, very different. And to have the future in mind, you have to just keep one thing uppermost. And that is, do not respect anybody who says, I'm an expert. Anybody who says I'm an expert is an expert of today, not of tomorrow. The expert of tomorrow will be born, yet to be born. So our minds should have to be open. If Hindi is an aspect of opening our minds, go ahead.
Again,
but then just one last point. But you have to keep in mind the technical proficiency, and are you equipping your students to think of the future and not of tomorrow? It has to be more than that. Thank you.
That's why I'm coming back to the two principles. Dehradun particularly is seen as a kind of school capital in India. They have so many great schools here with legacy. So in your school, how do you plan to take that legacy forward? And as we can't plan for future, as Professor has said, but at least to continue that legacy in a constructive way and with the changed environment, because what was 20 years back is not now. And we have a new education policy, though you claim that it's already in implementation in such schools. So how do you want to take it forward so that the place continues, Uttarakhand, Dehradun continues to contribute the same way it has been contributing for such a long time?
So, taking forward what Professor Gupta just said, I think the education now, to keep up with it, with the future, it's important that we focus on skills like, critical thinking. There's a talk of creativity, the ability to analyze problems, the ability to evaluate, possible solutions and see which one is a better one, to think out of the box, those are the skills that we need to inculcate in the school children today, whether it is through mathematics or English or geography or history, it doesn't matter. But eventually, these are the skills which will equip our students to take on the future, whatever it may be. So we need to equip them to find solutions, look at patterns, perceive patterns, develop a scientific temperament, inquire about questions, ask why, how. All those are more important than actually now, descriptive knowledge teaching.
So in new education policy, really experiments give students the chances to work upon them. A new concept was introduced recently, spake makers. So inside the school itself, early time we have only the labs, bio lab, chemistry lab, physics lab. Then after that there comes a utter tinkering lab concept is there. In many of the school it is introduced. But mostly it is a very difficult for government schools, but still government is trying. So where we are giving chances to the children to experiment themselves and bring out their skill so that they can use that skill for their future rather than a bookish knowledge. So there a new concept makerspace also it is done. Students of different taste students, they will come to a particular place. They were provided with large many facilities, gadgets, implements. Then they can work upon them and they can think of it, creating new creativities. And later they started to build up. So that is the need of the time. Because as Sir told, now we are training the children. What is the requirement at present time? You see, it is an era of computer, technology. But for the growth of technology also a limit is there. And what about the children, those who are getting educated in class 6, 7, 8, 9, when they reach to the society as a job seekers, what job possibilities are there? We have to pre-think it. If we want to pre-think and train the children like that way, the skill in them, the taste in them, the innermost interest in them, that we have to bring it out. So the new education policy that is introduced by the government is trying to work upon that aspect of the children in every education institution.
So you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment specifically on the new education policy, which I think has its sterling points. My argument is very simple. That is, if you're planning for the future, the most important thing is research. And on that, we're not paying enough attention. We have school principals here, and if you were to tour the country, you'll find many schools, forget schools, you'll find many colleges which don't even have a laboratory or a library. So unless you pay attention to research is important for one major reason. And that is, as Vibha was saying, it opens your mind up. It not only opens your mind up, it also tells you that every great researcher has feet of clay. You can be better. And that's very important. Don't worship anybody. When Immanuel Kant, you may have heard of the philosopher, he was, I think, born 60 or 70 years perhaps after Newton. And Immanuel Kant said, this is it. Newton has done everything in science, nothing more to be done. Today, we know how wrong he was. So science keeps leaping forward in most unexpected ways, but you must have research. Now the sad part is, in most parts of the world, and tragically even America, research funding to universities is going down. We don't pay enough attention to research. I'm all for vocational training, but vocational training is not future. It's tomorrow. If you want future, you have to have research. Now you think of anything, you think of artificial intelligence. Who did it? A university professor, McCarthy. That's the person who did it. Who taught us about COVID, this mRNA? University professor. Tim Berners-Lee's WWW, World Wide Web. They're all university, and Tim Berners-Lee said, I've invented it, but I will not patent it. Just like the inventor of polio said, I will not patent it because the world needs to benefit from it. This is very important. Now, the challenge to modern knowledge is not something that we can see. What will happen to modern knowledge in the future will be extraordinary and cannot be predicted today, but you must have research in the forefront. And that is not done adequately enough. In India, the R&D for research, and one doesn't want to talk about these things, but it's very low. It's 0.7 to 0.8% of GDP. Whereas in Korea, it's over 4%. Israel is over 4%. So we have to pay a lot of attention to research. And in our country, research unfortunately doesn't get much cachet, which is unfortunate. I wish all of you would say, fine, education, English, Hindi, medium, all that stuff, but please pay attention to research. So when the National Education Foundation for Formulation is there, do we have teachers who will encourage research? Or do we have teachers who will only talk about tomorrow? They have to talk about the future in the true sense of the term. And that is a challenge. Perhaps we should first train teachers and then talk about students. Maybe we should reverse the chronology.
About research, the government keeps claiming about, because we have two principals here, so I can directly ask, they keep talking about Atal Tinkering Lab and many such initiatives by the central government. And the focus is of new education policy is also on this. So do you think changes are happening? What sir is saying, do you think that's happening, or are we moving in that direction, or it's same, the status quo?
See, I think the tinkering labs, they are now, they've started getting introduced in schools, but it's just the tip of the iceberg at the moment.
They claim there are 1 lakh
yes, but that's far and few, because we've just started with this innovation. It has to grow into something very, very big. And with how Professor Gupta, he's talked about research. Research is something different. Even teachers at the school level should be encouraged as part of their continuous professional development program to research. That's how it'll open their mind. And when they are going to be interacting with those children, imagine what kind of an exponential effect it will have. So that's important. Tinkering labs are there. The government has introduced it. Lots of incentives, financial incentives have been given as well to schools. But what is the quality of those labs? What is exactly happening there? That has to be closely monitored. And also there are teachers who are teaching robotics and AI and VR and all of those new subjects that have come in. Those are far less in number. I know many, co-principals who have a struggle finding good faculty to teach such subjects. So that's important, I think.
I'm sorry to butt in, if you don't mind. I'll just say this much. We're talking about science, artificial intelligence, and so forth. But there is so much that is happening in the social sciences also, yes, which we don't pay attention to. For example, today's villages of India are not like the villages we read in my textbook. They're very different, completely different, in fact. Today, the rural net domestic product is not agricultural as much as it used to be. Perhaps over 65% of the village economy is not agricultural anymore. If you see the village to village migration, people go to other villages not to work on land, but to work in MSMEs, in small workshops. And students, by the way, are trying very hard to break the mold. Over 95% of students are in primary school. About 90% are there in secondary education. Over 70% in tertiary education. 71% of people take loans to go to universities and colleges. Now, they deserve something better, and it's not just vocational training or whatever. They deserve to have their minds opened up. There's a wonderful line in this poem by Anthony, called Elegy Written in the Country Churchyard. it says, full many a mind was born to blush unseen and waste its sweetness in the desert air. Now, why should these minds be wasting their sweetness? Our schools and colleges and universities should do their best to open up their minds through research. Thank you.
Now, about education, the accessibility has become a big issue. With blended education now coming in, there are two arguments. One is that some say that because technology is helping education reach more students, it has become easier. Someone can learn through the mobile with just an internet connection. But that's also adding to that digital divide, where there are students who would not have access to a cell phone or internet connection, which is actually widening the gap. Added to that, schools like Wilhelms or Indian Public School, where the access would be limited to students from a certain economic class. Of course, there are EWS, but then there are issues like social assimilation within the school. I would leave the first part of the question, which is I'm talking about a blended education and social divide, to Professor Gupta, but about this accessibility to quality schools for students from weaker social background, economic background. How can we solve that problem? How schools like Wilhelms or Indian Public School can take initiative to open up to students, quality students from socially and economically backward sections, apart from the EWS quota, which has many problems. I'll start with Mr. Mani.
So this is a very important question, because you see many of the Dehradun itself is known as a educational hub, because if we talk about the residential school, all over India, if we consider Dehradun is the place where maximum residential schools we have. Yet it has become an educational hub. Two reasons are there. One is that cultural aspects, scenic beauty, and climatical conditions that help to become an educational hub, that Uttarakhand and Dehradun. But as I thought, it is a very important question. What percentage of the society or the community, student community, can access to it? Affordability, accessibility, it is very important. But in our society still, near to 60% of the students are not accessible to this sort of facility which the residential school is providing. And in which way we can reach to them, that has become a very important question. If, as far as my school is concerned, near to 10% of the students, our management has given the consent to teach them by giving scholarship. Right now in my school, 36 students are studying. Out of 36, 12 students were given 100% scholarship. We are not charging any money. So the remaining, according to the academic performance of the students and family background of the students, those who are financially backward or financially poor, we give certain criteria. On the basis of that, 100%, 80%, 60%, like that way, we provided scholarship for the last 10 years. But still, that is only a nominal number. So government is trying to bring up with large many policies and programs where the children are not capable of financially accessible of the facilities. The government is introducing. But now the question is that whatever things here the government provided, whether it is reaching to the root level or not. If it is reaching to the root level, to what extent, what is the magnitude of it? That also we have to consider. So hope that along with the new economic policy, government will be able to extend this sort of experiential learning, experimental learning, vocal education, vocational education. They are conducting experiments at the various school levels. I hope that government will be able to reach to the people, but it will take time.
And when we are trying to implement it, three things we have to keep in mind. Work harder, work faster, work in bunch. Not take individual, not take a small group of people. We have to work in bunch. A large number of people we have to work, then only we will be able to reach it.
I'd also like to add that most legacy institutions, and Dehradun has got quite a few here. We normally have a corpus that we keep aside for giving 100% bursaries to people from the, who cannot really afford the kind of tuition that we charge. So that aside, and we'd like to actually support them not only through schooling, but later on, even post-schooling, we also have some kind of a system where the alumni then jumps in to ensure that even at the college level, they're supported through and through. And especially, I like to talk about a girls' school, because when you get a girl, you educate her, and you support her through college, the effect is exponential when she goes back to her community. It is not only one person that she brings up the entire family and the community that she lives in. She brings that up. The level goes up.
Yes, I agree with you, ma'am, because there is a says, when we teach a boy, we teach an individual. When we teach a girl, we teach the entire nation. Because the first learning, first teaching that comes from the family, there comes the importance of a girl child.
And,
definitely.
And also, I'd like to just add a little thing, is also that, we have teachers who have a lot of experience, very mature, but we also,
briefly.
We encourage our teachers. Actually, we've got associations with a lot of other schools where our teachers actually go and train the teachers over there, whether it is for the board examinations or for anything else or for worksheets. A lot of resource material is also shared. So it's not that we keep it all to ourselves. We try and give it back to the community as much as possible.
Last point, Professor Gupta, briefly.
Yeah, I think what your schools are doing is really very commendable. I know I was part of the Dhan School Board, and we tried very hard to bring in students from different backgrounds to erase the impression that Dhan School is an elite school. But no matter how hard you try, you are still going to fall short. In this respect, I would like all of us to put this idea on the table, and we have a very honorable minister here, that unless you have universal public education, where public schools are better than private schools, it won't work. Long-term, future. You see, in France, for example, thank you. In France, if you want to go to the best school in France, it is a public school. It's only when you're not that good or your parents have a serious religious problem, you go to a private school. The best schools in France are public schools. The best universities in France are public universities. In fact, the best hospitals in France are public hospitals. So if you really want to give your children a rounded education and an egalitarian one, think long-term, think future. In terms of universal public education, it takes 10 years for it to kick in terms of GDP, but those 10 years are worth waiting, though there'll be 2 elections in between.
That's a serious food for thought for our policymakers. Thank you, all of you, for coming here and joining us in this exciting session. Thank you so much for being here.
मैं इंडिया टुडे के एडिटर रंजीत सहाय जी से निवेदन करूंगा कि वो मंच पर आकर हमारे मेहमानों को सम्मानित करें। एडिटर इंडिया टुडे रंजीत सहाय। हरीश रावत जी, दोस्तों, उत्तराखंड की राजनीति का सबसे बड़ा चेहरा यहाँ पर हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं। थैंक यू कौशिक। दोस्तों एक बार जोरदार तालियों से हरीश रावत जी का स्वागत कीजिए।